Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hey, it's Bumpkins, and we are going to talk more comic books today. What's going on, guys? We're back with another episode, issue, if you will, of Comics Daily Weekly. This is issue number 9. Comics Daily Weekly, if you don't know, it's a weekly stream slash video podcast kind of thing. It's the weekly version of the daily Twitter account I run, at underscore comics daily. You'll see it on the screen in just a minute. And if it sounds weird, it's because it is. I read one comic book every day, at least one comic book every day. Typically sticking with the Silver Age, some of the Silver Age comics from Marvel Comics right now. Every week in our time is 1 month's worth of books that came out way back when. So this week we're talking about comics that came out in April of 1967. And I'll go ahead and run those issues down for you. So today we're talking about Amazing Spider-Man number 47, Tales of Suspense number 88, Daredevil number 27, Avengers number 39, Strange Tales number 155, and Fantastic Four number 61. So if you've been with us for the last few weeks, these stories are they're all continuing off of each other, and there's some good, there's some bad, just the way it happens every week. Let me get a couple of my windows fixed up here and we will get started. Excuse me. All right, let's flip over. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. Amazing Spider-Man number 47. Now, this issue features Kraven the Hunter, which I was excited to get to. Not only are we getting John Romita Spider-Man, one of my favorite, possibly my favorite Spider-Man artist of all time. He's responsible for that classic look that everybody knows. And we are, as these issues go on, we are seeing him get more and more into his style. So we've talked about it every week, where when he first jumped on the book back in Amazing Spider-Man number 39, he looked a little bit more like Steve Ditko, but every issue he gets a little closer to his style, and we're pretty much there now. But he's got a little way to go still. But John Romita on art, Kraven the Hunter, which is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. I was trying to think where he ranks in my list. Green Goblin is obviously my number one. I think he has the most impact on Spider-Man in his life. But Kraven's got to be in the top 5. I don't really know what my order is. Excuse me, but Kraven is definitely up there. So, John Romita with Kraven, yes please. So, this is it's sort of a continuation of what we saw before. What's interesting about this issue is it actually is based on something that we didn't even see. So, I don't have the issue number in front of me, but in Kraven's last appearance, and there's a caption box in here that tells us when that is. In Kraven's last appearance, he showed up to take down Spider-Man. What we apparently didn't see, what they didn't show us then that we learn in this issue, is that he was actually paid by Norman Osborn / Green Goblin to do that. So we didn't know that at the time. It's almost like they sort of retcon that story in as an excuse to give Kraven to show back up. So that's took me a little bit to get my brain around that. I thought, did I miss something? Did I miss Norman Osborn popping up in one of those early Kraven appearances? But I don't think I did. I think we're just supposed to assume that that's what happened, and they do tell us about that. Sorry about that cough button. Let's get right into it. We don't have to guess on that too much. They do tell us that that's what happened, but we'll see here in a second. So, like I said, Kraven the Hunter, one of my favorite villains, and this issue is full of him. So the issue starts with a flashback, but it's a flashback that we didn't see. So this right here, when I saw this page, I was like, wait a minute. When did Kraven and Green Goblin, when were they together? But they weren't that we saw. So the big yellow arrow at the beginning, let's see if I can zoom in on this. It's not what? Marvel Unlimited on the browser isn't always the most reliable. There we go. Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, let's take a look at this. So it starts with, worry not, Frantic One. If this tantalizing tableau makes you feel as though you've just walked in at the middle of a movie, that's what we talked about. That's the whole idea. It's supposed to arouse your interest, excite your curiosity, and titillate your thirst for the unexpected. However, now that we got you to read this far, we better admit that it's a flashback scene showing an incident that occurred just a few months ago while the Green Goblin was still flying high. So let's join the party and see what's shaking, sweetie. So remember, since Amazing Spider-Man number 40, Norman Osborn has forgotten that he's the Green Goblin, right? So, and that's going to play into this. That has an influence on this issue as well. So this whole first couple pages is all about the thing that we didn't see. So it's all about Kraven being hired by Norman Osborn to take down Spider-Man. Now, Kraven doesn't know that Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin, and he never got his money. That's the big crux of this issue, is he was hired to do a job and he never got his money. Well, Norman's excuse is, well, you didn't beat Spider-Man, right? So Kraven's back in town to get his money. He wants to get paid, and he's going to do whatever it takes to get that. So this whole page is just outlining what happened. This is setting up the story that we didn't see before, and it involves the offer of money. Norman Osborn is there. Of course, you don't really see that it's his face. Kraven doesn't get his money. He goes, he doesn't know how to find the Green Goblin, so he follows Norman Osborn, because Norman Osborn is, in his mind, they're two different people, and Norman Osborn's the money guy. He says, no sign of the Goblin. He must not be meeting him tonight, but at least I'll learn that his mouthpiece is Norman Osborn, the rich chemical manufacturer. The Goblin must be bigger than I thought to have a millionaire like him serving as his flunky. So that's the whole crux of this issue, is Kraven's back in town, wants his money, he's going to cross paths with Spider-Man, and hilarity is going to ensue. We do get some cool interactions with Peter and his amazing friends, as I like to call them. So I say it every week, my favorite part of these books is the character moments. I like, obviously, fights between superheroes and supervillains. And that was always my favorite part as a kid. But reading these now, I really, really like to see the characters interact with each other, because I know where they all end up. I know where Peter and Mary Jane wind up. I know where Peter and Gwen wind up. We all know what happens to Gwen, and we all know what happens to Harry and Norman and all those guys. I like to see their journey to that spot. So that's always real fun for me. We get another great couple panels of Mary Jane being just completely space cadet, not in a bad way though. She's just carefree. She's going over to Aunt Anna and Aunt May's house. She's gonna help. I thought it was funny. She offered to help them move some boxes, but then she just starts dancing instead. That's typical Mary Jane, I guess. Norman Osborn stops by because, remember, as of last issue, Peter and Harry are living together now. So I was excited to, see that aspect of Peter's life grow now. Norman's stopping by again. He has forgotten that he's the Green Goblin, so keep that in mind. We go back to Kraven. Now, this is a little weird right here. This is a little un-Kraven-like for me. He's got these, to use 60s terms, he's got these ray guns in his vest. And that just, to me, when he was in one of his earlier appearances, he used like tranquilizers or something to sort of dull Spidey's senses. And that all of that just seems un-Kraven-like to me, because Kraven prides himself in being able to, he's the greatest hunter ever in his mind. And anything that, it's almost like he wouldn't want to play a video game on easy mode, right? He wants the challenge. He doesn't want any advantages. And we'll get to that in the later Kraven. Earlier Kraven did use a few little dirty tricks like that here and there, and this will come back in later on in the issue. So it's a little un-Kraven-like for me. But it's not too bad. So Kraven is lamenting the fact that he still hasn't been paid yet. Meanwhile, we go back to Peter, Harry, and Gwen. We get some great interactions there. Gwen's going to throw a party for Flash, because remember, Flash is about to go into the military, so that's going to open up a whole other segment of Flash's life. And so here's something I don't know. I don't know if we actually, if like Flash is going to not be in Amazing Spider-Man for a while. I know he goes off to the military and he comes back, but I don't know how long he's absent from this title. So that's something I probably should know. But honestly, I haven't read every single one of these old issues. So even though I've read comics for 30 years and Spider-Man has always been my favorite, and I consider myself sort of a pseudo expert on Spider-Man, I don't know the specifics of a lot of this stuff because I haven't read every single one of these. We get a little bit of Ned and Betty. We get a little bit of Peter trying to get paid from Jonah Jameson. So everything's pretty normal. Most of this issue is Peter confronting Kraven. Kraven busts in here. He's after Norman Osborn to get his money. This is Norman's butler, and I don't know if he's named here. But he busts in on Norman's butler to try to get money. Norman is out of town, so this is important too. Norman is on a business trip out of town, so Kraven's got to figure out a different way to get his money. So keep that in mind. Peter and Harry are going out to Flash's party. They're meeting up with Gwen and Mary Jane. I love this middle sequence. I can't really zoom in. Well, let's see. Yeah, here we go. I love this middle sequence here because it puts... I'll try to center that up. I love the way this is laid out here because, Peter right now is sort of torn between Gwen and Mary Jane. Now, he's leaning a little bit more towards Gwen, but Gwen is a little bit aloof, and MJ still does kind of catch his eye. Anyway, I like how this is laid out because they're even the way that they're facing each other. Gwen to the right, Mary Jane to the left, Peter kind of caught in the middle. I really like that how they did that. And something I noticed now is having read the May issue of Daredevil today. We'll talk about that next week. In that issue, Matt Murdock wears a bright yellow overcoat. And I was thinking, why, I mean, he's blind, so maybe he could be forgiven for wearing a bright yellow overcoat, but now Peter's got one here too. I don't know what it is about the 60s and people wearing yellow overcoats, and I think I've seen it somewhere else too. It's weird. It's weird. All right. So they're at the party. Now, I like this because so I've said that I do like the fights between the heroes and the villains. And I really like the character interactions, especially between Peter and his amazing friends. This issue kind of bridges those two together, which is really cool. So they're at Flash's going away party. The whole gang's there. Harry and Mary Jane and Gwen and Flash and Peter and all those guys. They're all here. And I did make a note of a couple of these different panels. It's on this page. I just love these panels are so fun. Mary Jane and Peter dancing, Gwen dancing. I love that she's trying to hand out burgers, which is, it seems kind of weird to have at a party like this, but these are just really fun. And like I said last week, I love the 60s dialogue. It's so, I wonder if people really did talk like that back then. I probably won't ever know. But their fun won't last too long because Fathoom. Kraven comes busting in. Kraven is there because Harry's there. So like I said, Norman's out of town. The butler didn't have anything to offer him. So Kraven is coming after Harry Osborn because he wants his money. He wants to get paid. And then the rest of this issue mostly is Peter and Kraven going at it, right? Flash tries to intervene, gets slapped around with a big thwop. Peter runs off, puts on his Spidey costume, and the rest of it is a really cool fight on, it looks like a construction site. Spider-Man doing his acrobatics, which is one of the things I love about Spider-Man. I've said it before. I love acrobatic heroes like Spider-Man and Daredevil and Nightwing over on the DC side. I love those kinds of fights. Jonah is worried about getting down to the fight to cover it. He's grabbed a Frederick Foswell. Let's go. Let's get pictures. Let's get this story. And the rest of it's just a cool fight. And by the way, Norman hears about it through the news, and he is going to rush downtown. So I thought that, well, we'll get to that in a second. More fighting, Spider and Kraven. Here on this page is where this chest ray, I don't know what you call that, but the ray in his vest, basically what that does is that it kind of, it sort of softens Spidey's muscles, I guess. It makes him to where he feels like he can't move. It's not a paralyzing ray like that, but it sort of reduces the strength and speed in his muscles. So he just feels like real sluggish, like he can't move. Again, very un-Kraven-like, because Kraven doesn't like to have an advantage. Kraven it likes the thrill of the hunt. Kraven's Last Hunt, that great story that we're going to get to probably like 5 or 6 years from now at the pace we're going, right, with one issue a week. But so it's weird to see Kraven use something like this. I hope that he knocks it off, because this isn't the Kraven that I know. More fighting now. He does see Norman has finally arrived. He snatches up Norman, and I was like, oh, and especially right here, he pulls him up, demanding his money. And remember, again, Norman Osborn has amnesia, or doesn't have amnesia, but he has selective amnesia, I guess, from Amazing Spider-Man number 40, where he forgot that he's the Green Goblin, basically. So he forgot ever having met Kraven. Kraven's wanting his money. Norman says, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember. And Kraven, he says, wow, you really don't remember. And I was thinking, oh, here it comes, especially this last panel right here. I was thinking, here it is. This is how something's going to happen. This is how Norman gets his memory back for being of his time as the Green Goblin, and this is going to lead into the next Green Goblin appearance. But alas, not in this issue. I don't know if it's going to eventually. Maybe it does, and he's faking it here. He's just not showing it here. I'm not sure. And to be honest, I'm not really sure when he shows up again. When the Green Goblin shows up again. Again, I should know that, but like I said, I've not read every single one of these old issues. I know the general story for a lot of these characters, but I haven't ever read issue by issue one at a time before. So I'm learning some of this stuff along with you guys, unless you guys know it too. But that's it. I mean, party's over. Norman's saved. Harry's going to take him back home. Flash and Peter, the Flash and Peter relationship has been great, because it really has. We're on 47 issues now, and it really has grown very organically. They were complete rivals in high school. Flash was a total bully. They moved into college. Flash was a little bit less of a bully, but still kind of, really sort of went at Peter. But they've been in college now for almost 20 issues. And just every issue where we get these interactions like this, Flash and Peter are less going at each other like enemies and more just poking and prodding each other like a friendly rivalry. And it's been very, very organic. So that's why I like these character interactions, because that's been very fun to see. It's been very fun to see that relationship grow very naturally. So, and you can see at the end here, they're shaking hands. Flash is about to go off to the service tomorrow. If that's right, I almost forgot you leave tomorrow for the service. I want to wish you all the best, Flash. Something tells me you got what it takes to come out on top, fella. There's our fella count. There was 3 of them in this issue. And I'm bidding you to too. And he says, you know what, something, Parker? Every so often, I figure you're not as square as I thought. Take good care of the chicks for old Flasharoo while I'm gone, you hear? Hope I'm not squeezing your hand too hard, because a Spider-Man you ain't. And I think that's one of the great things too, is Flash being such a big Spider-Man fan. And, not knowing that the kid he was bullying in high school was Spider-Man at the time. Obviously, he learns later, but that was always real fun. So, really cool ending to this book, and a cool end to Flash's run in this book for now. He's not in the next issue. I've already read that. We'll talk about that next week. So like I said, I don't know when he comes back, but he is going to come back. So that was a good issue. John Romita, Spider-Man, Kraven, interaction with Peter and the gang. This was a lot of fun. I liked it. This was a good one. Moving on. Tales of Suspense number 88. Now, just remind you again that Tales of Suspense is a double feature between Iron Man and Captain America. It has been that way for almost 30 issues now. Number 59 was the first time that Captain America showed up in Tales of Suspense. And by the end of the year, Tales of Suspense ends with number 99. It continues. It transforms into a Captain America book and keeps going with number 100 and 101 and thereon. And then Iron Man gets his own book starting with number 1, and we're going to be hitting those right at the end of the year or like the first week in January, according to the schedule. But this has been a pretty solid book so far. I didn't love it for a long time because Iron Man was always crying that he was out of juice, and he hasn't done that for a really long time now. So this has been pretty solid. And let me get to my notes on this one. Number 88. Here we go. So yeah, so I did like this one. This was fun. So this Iron Man story is a continuation of the story that we saw last week, which, remember last week, Mole Man was after this atomic driller tool weapon thing that Tony Stark was building. Mole Man wanted it because it was going to allow exploration into the beneath Earth's surface, if you will, like maybe down even into Earth's core. And Mole Man wanted that to be able to have easy access to the surface so that he could take over the surface, because that's what Mole Man always wants to do. He always wants to take over the surface world. So he sunk some buildings down into the ground, which is the third time that he's done that in all of these issues. I think he did it. We talked about it last week. I don't have the issue numbers here. Fantastic Four 22 and 31, I think. I don't quite remember. Like I said, we talked about it last issue. But so anyway, last issue, he sunk some more buildings into the ground, including Stark Industries. So Stark Industries sank. Stark Industries is down like way beneath the surface now. And that's where we find Iron Man and Pepper. So Mole Man and Iron Man didn't really face off last issue. Remember last week I said this, it's kind of a build up to what we have now. So the issue starts with Iron Man and Pepper deep underground. Iron Man's real pissed. Pepper, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. She said she was looking for Tony in Stark Industries when it sank. So now we've got Iron Man and Pepper running around underground. Gene Colan on art again. He is fantastic. He does Iron Man and Daredevil. And we'll get to Daredevil next. But I like this bottom panel here of Iron Man fighting some of the Mole Man's subterraneans. And something, too, I noticed is that they look bigger and more muscular. Like, normally they're portrayed as small and, like, just sort of skinny, I guess. But Gene Colan puts a little bit of girth on them, which is kind of neat. I like seeing Iron Man take on a big army like that. So a lot of this is just Iron Man fighting these subterraneans, trying to get out with Pepper, making sure that she doesn't get hurt while trying to get out. Really, Iron Man really shouldn't have too much of a problem with Mole Man, but Mole Man proves to be a worthy adversary here. But most of this issue is just a lot of fighting, so there's not a whole lot of stuff to really delve into. But Mole Man is really proving to be a troublesome foe for Iron Man. They're trying to get out. Now, one thing, the army is going to lower in, like they're going to send in the troops basically, right, to help Iron Man to defeat Mole Man. But Iron Man doesn't want him to. It says, let's see. Let me see if I can find it for you. Request no aid. Repeat, request no aid. Mole Man and subterranean army responsible for missing buildings. They have mustered deadly strike force below. Any surface reconnaissance forces faces certain annihilation. So Iron Man doesn't want any help because he knows that if you send the army down this hole, they're just going to get overrun with subterraneans. Better to let me handle it myself. And he actually gets a message up to the army, and they call off the mission. So it's all up to Iron Man to save the day. Now, this was pretty cool. This reminded me a little bit of Fin Fang Foom, which I don't think we've seen yet. Well, I haven't seen him in any of the books that I've read. And so I thought this was really neat. It was like, oh, cool, a big like lizard dragon thing down beneath the surface. Because Mole Man is known for not only having the subterraneans, his subterranean army, but he's got like all these weird like creatures and stuff down there too that we don't know about. Well, come to find out, because it's the 60s, of course it's a robot, right? Which is a little bit disappointing. I even made a note of that. It says, of course, because everything in the 60s was some kind of robot. And this is too. How you make a giant robot, lizard, dinosaur, fire-breathing thing, I don't know. I actually talk about that in the issue of Tales of Suspense that I read yesterday, which we'll talk about next week. More robots, more androids, and that kind of stuff. It gets a little old after a while. Everything in the 60s is a robot or an android or something. Half of those have the ability to absorb the powers or the traits of heroes or other people. It gets real old real fast. Everything is the same, basically. But Iron Man's fighting this big robot, lizard, fire-breathing dragon thing. Meanwhile, the Subterraneans capture Pepper, and he's got to get her out. He lets himself get caught so that he can just hurry up and get. It's a means of getting to the Mole Man really quickly so that he can save Pepper. I just thought I saw something weird. Anyway. So there was kind of a neat ending here. Mole Man, because he sank Stark Industries into the ground, that means he has access to the atomic driller that he was trying to get last issue. Now, if you remember last issue, Tony Stark couldn't quite get it to work yet. And remember last issue when we talked about it last week, like there's always a crowd of people outside of Stark Industries. And when he was experimenting on the atomic driller, it didn't blow up, but it did all this weird stuff, and all these lights and everything were coming out of Stark Industries. Well, it's because he wasn't able to perfect it. Well, Mole Man doesn't know that. So Mole Man flips on the driller. He's going to send his army up to the surface, but it actually sort of backfires and causes a big cave-in, basically. Now, we don't see Iron Man and Pepper's big escape, but you can see it sort of here at the end. They just sort of fly out. And we're just to assume that they survived. And we know that they did because he pops up next issue, which we'll talk about next week. The Melter comes back next week, and the Melter is ridiculous. So, but this was pretty neat. I did make a note that I like this because it's fun to see heroes fight villains that they aren't normally associated with. So Mole Man is primarily known as a Fantastic Four villain, even though up to this point he's faced off against the Fantastic Four and the Avengers or members of the Avengers pretty much an equal number of times. So he's not really beholden to any one super team yet. He'll become more ingrained with the Fantastic Four later. But it's always kind of cool to see, like the issue of Daredevil when he fought Doctor Doom. That was super cool. Daredevil against Doctor Doom, that's awesome. And that's going to happen again in a few months, I think, when we never get to it. But it's cool to see heroes and villains who aren't normally associated with each other face off. I like that. Flipping over to the Captain America story. Remember last issue, Cap was, and I think it was in the Avengers issue from last week, Cap was manning the post while the other Avengers went off. Cap actually left his post, which is very un-Cap-like. Cap doesn't leave his post at the Avengers mansion when there's nobody else around, but he left for this reason right here. He got a call from Bucky saying, "Hey Cap, I'm alive. I've been held prisoner all these years. You got to free me before it's too late." Cap's like, "What? Bucky? That's crazy. Okay, yeah, I'm leaving. Jarvis, I'm out. Tell the Avengers where I'm at, and he flies to this island. It's called Seagull Isle, because that's supposedly where Bucky is. Now, there's this weird thing with this weird floating plastic bubble, and I don't really understand it. But anyway, when he gets to the, long story short, when he gets to the island, he has to face off against Power Man and Swordmaster. I'm sorry, Swordsman, Power Man and Swordsman. They're there waiting for him. So they're on Seagull Island at this giant, what looks like an underground base. And they've been summoned there by a mysterious figure who we won't learn who it is in this issue. We do learn who it is in the next issue. I read that one today. We'll talk about it next week, so I won't reveal who it is now. Although I did have a guess as to who it was last time, and I was right. But not that it's any big surprise. But this whole thing is basically Captain America versus Power Man and Swordsman. What I really liked about it, and here's that weird plastic bubble again. There's this giant ray gun that you shoot it at something and it envelops everything in this bubble, and then the bubble gets brought down into this chamber. It's weird. I didn't enjoy that part of it. But this was cool. I mean, Captain America, look at this. Captain America, so his ship gets sucked up into the bubble, gets pulled into this secret base. Cap comes out swinging. I mean, these first two panels on this page right here, Cap, I just imagine Cap throwing open the door. Because Cap is looking for Bucky. It's his best friend. One of his greatest regrets, probably his greatest regret at this point, is seeing Bucky die, not being able to save him. So I can imagine Cap just throwing open the door of his ship, slinging that shield, and then throwing a right hook. I mean, just levels Swordsman coming out of that ship. These first two panels are awesome because he doesn't waste any time. Because if you remember, when Swordsman and Power Man showed up in earlier issues of the Avengers, it took the entire team to take them down, right? Not here. Cap is so bound and determined to find Bucky. He's just, I don't have time for this. I'm just going to lay both of you out. And he does. This was a really cool fight between Cap and both of these guys. I mean, just that, this panel right here, holy cow. I mean, now, I've talked about how Jack Kirby was the master of making you feel the impact, making you feel every hit. This isn't Jack Kirby, but holy cow, that panel right there, I thought that was awesome. Because, I mean, I'm surprised that the very next panel, Swordsman is up. I mean, I felt that when I saw that. I didn't want to, I couldn't stand up for a few minutes. I forget, is not Gene Colan, Gil Kane, I think, is the artist on this. Let me go back. Yeah, Gil Kane, who's a pretty legendary artist back in the day. This doesn't look very Gil Kane. I think he's still got a ways to go in his development. He'll show up on Amazing Spider-Man, I think, after John Romita, but John Romita stays on that book for a long time, so we won't see Gil Kane on that book for a long time. But he'll come into his own as we move through these books. Lays out Swordsman. Why do I keep wanting to call him Swordmaster? That's not it. It's Swordsman. Lays out the Swordsman. Power Man. Now remember, Power Man's like super strong too, right? Doesn't matter. Cap is so determined. I mean, he's taking on both of them. I love these kinds of shots. I can just barely get that in. I love these kind of shots where Cap is like, leaping and hiding behind his shield as he dodges a blast from Swordsman. That's super cool. Sorry, guys. All the talking gives me the dry throat. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, this is just basically just a big fight. Cap eventually lays him out. But then he sees this mysterious figure, the guy sort of pulling all the strings. And whoever that is, because we don't know during this story, whoever that is says that he's going to use his weird bubble machine to stick entire cities in bubbles and do what with him. And that just gives me makes me think of Brainiac. How Brainiac likes to bottle cities and collect them, the bottle city of Kandor and all that stuff. This is very Brainiac-esque. And he's catches Captain America in another one of those weird bubbles. And at the very last panel, Cap sees who it is and says, "You!" And whoever it is says, "I rather thought you would be surprised. Feast your eyes well upon me as I savor this triumphant moment, for I am the last sight you will ever again behold, and next issue is Back from the Dead." So you can only imagine who it is, right? But I'm not going to say here. I'll save it for next week. But I will say that I was happy to see who it was, and I hope that knowing what goes on in Captain America 100, which is only 12 issues from now, hopefully this is sort of kicking off a really long arc to get us to that point, because that's going to be really fun to read if it happens the way I hope it does. So that was fun. That was a really action-packed issue, or a really action-packed Cap story in an overall fun issue of Tales of Suspense. And yeah, more to come on this story, because this is gonna. I really hope this is gonna continue on to be something cool. All right, moving on to Daredevil number 27. The third, the final part of a 3-part story featuring Mask Marauder, Stilt Man, and Mike Murdock. Oh my gosh, this story, this 3-part story couldn't finish fast enough. None of this was good. Now, we do get a guest appearance by Spider-Man, which normally for me would be all I needed for this to be really fun. But we'll get there in a minute. But yeah, Stiltman, the Masked Marauder, Mike Murdock. The good news about this issue is we don't actually see any of Mike Murdock in this issue. We don't get douchebag Mike Murdock in this. But Mike Murdock, and I made a note of this because twice, one on the cover and then one on the opening page, Mike Murdock must die, and I tweeted both of those and said, I wholeheartedly agree. Mike Murdock's got to go. Now, peeking ahead into, or just looking ahead at the covers for some upcoming issues, Mike Murdock's around for longer than I want him to be. There is another cover that says The Death of Mike Murdock, but it's not for like several more issues, and at our pace of only one a week, it's going to be probably another couple months before we get there. Maybe not quite that long, but so I think we might be stuck with Mike Murdock for a while, unfortunately. More Gene Colan on this. Gene Colan is doing a great job on the art on this book. Oops. So, like I said, if you remember the Masked Marauder, we learned he is actually the owner of the building that Nelson and Murdock has their office in. So that's something, right? And he's also working with Stiltman to learn Daredevil's identity and expose him. He knows that Karen and Matt and Foggy are close to Daredevil, right? So we'll get to that in a minute. But opening of this issue, we see Spider-Man. Hey, that's cool. Spider-Man's there. Spider-Man's fighting a couple thugs. Daredevil's going to intervene. We get this cool little Daredevil Spider-Man team up. It almost doesn't ever get any better than a team up between Spider-Man and Daredevil. Obviously, you know, like Superman, Batman. Obviously, that's your number one team up duo. But Spider-Man, Daredevil, that's up there, man. That's up there, probably the top 5 comic book team up duos that you can get. Spider-Man and Daredevil. I love anytime these guys get together. The only thing is, and I made a note of this too. Which panel is it? So, because I want to focus, it's this one. So the only thing about Spider-Man's guest, let me get back to it. The only thing about Spider-Man's guest appearance in this, and I made a note of this on Twitter, that Spider-Man has always been and always will be my favorite superhero, right? He's always been my number one guy. But I've never loved when he guest appeared in other books, because he's always written as too big of a goofball or is physically weaker than he really is, Or in the case of every book in the 60s, he's simply written as a jerk. And he is. He's a total jerk in this issue. And I don't know why. Because, you could, in modern books, you could chalk it up to, well, one writer writes him this way, another writer writes him that way. But Stan Lee's writing all these books, right? So Stan should be able to keep a consistent Spider-Man across both books. And this Spider-Man in this book is a jerk. He pops up here and he pops up again at the end. And it's just, he's just like, that's not my Spider-Man. That's not my favorite character. So, and I don't mean to harp on it too much because it doesn't have too much of an effect on this issue. But, Spider-Man is fighting these two thugs. He didn't need any help. But Daredevil jumps in and helps anyway, right? That's pretty cool. So Daredevil says, hey, tell me, so when they're done, tell me something, Spidey. Have you seen anything of a guy called Stiltman? And Spider-Man just says, no, now get lost. Someone might think it took two of us to lick 3 penny anti-hoods. And like, what? That's not, and especially thinking how, well, we'll get to it next week. In the next issue of Spider-Man that we'll talk about next week, he actually at one point thinks about calling Daredevil for help. Why would Daredevil help if you're being like this to him? Although that's in a different book, so he's not a jerk in that book. It's just, I just didn't like it. I just didn't like it at all. Anyway, Masked Marauder and Stiltman, they are bound and determined to capture Matt and Foggy and Karen. And they got a helicopter, which doesn't seem all that remarkable. But this helicopter has this weird, what was it called? This weird force field around it, right? Where, as you can see here, he throws like a box at it, and it disintegrates into this force field that's around this helicopter. Okay, and then they have a size measuring contest about Masked Marauder says, well, I've got this force field around my helicopter. Stiltman says, well, I can grow my stilts really tall and really fast. I still don't know how that's supposed to make him a threat to anyone, but it does, I guess. Sure, why not? So they're all really impressed. Both of them are impressed with what the other one has. Stiltman's going to grow his stilts and walk around the city. He's going to bust in. He's going to capture Nelson and Matt and Foggy and Karen. They get taken up into the Masked Marauder's helicopter. Because remember, Masked Marauder is trying to figure out, he's trying to milk these guys to find out who Daredevil really is. So Matt comes to, they all come to, and basically Matt just, Matt's like, oh yeah, it's, that's my brother Mike. He just totally gives up the goose. Daredevil is Mike Murdock, my twin brother. But he doesn't have any choice. Like that's his, he thinks that's the only way he can get out of it. And he does. Let's see, how does he do it? Here's Spider-Man again. So Spider-Man has a cool little fight with Stiltman. So Stiltman, while Masked Marauder's doing this, Stiltman's robbing a place, stealing some jewelry. There's a cool couple pages of Spider-Man versus Stiltman, which, I'll take any Spider-Man anything, but Stiltman, I mean, really. And then he winds up defeating Stiltman. Well, let's jump ahead to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's back up. Let's not jump too far ahead. So this is kind of cool. So Masked Marauder basically throws Matt out of the helicopter. And he, as you can see here, and if I ever release this as audio and you're listening to it as an audio version, sorry that you can't see it. But basically, Matt falls out of the helicopter but catches the landing rails underneath the helicopter. He catches that with his legs, throws his clothes off, swings underneath the helicopter, and comes back up as Daredevil. That was pretty cool. I mean, it's really unrealistic, but it was still pretty cool. Good on you, Daredevil. And then swings in, takes a shot at Masked Marauder, knocks him out. Some cool fights here, some cool punches. They learn that Masked Marauder is Mr. Farnham, like I said, the owner of the building that their office is in. So Matt, this was kind of gruesome because Mass Marauder falls out of the helicopter, but remember, there's that force field around it, so he sort of gets vaporized by this force field. I don't know if that's for good. I don't know if he's ever going to come back, but that was a little weird. You know, it's kind of like getting chopped up in the helicopter blades. It was a little strange. But he gets vaporized by the force field, and that's it for the Mass Marauder. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is still contending with Stiltman. I cannot believe it's taking Spider-Man this long to beat Stiltman. And, oh, you know what? I thought that maybe it was last issue with Daredevil. I thought Spider-Man wrapped up Stiltman's legs with his webbing, you know, a la how a snowspeeder did it to an AT-AT in Empire Strikes Back, or how Spider-Man did it to Ant-Man/Giant Man in Captain America: Civil War, the movie. But that didn't happen here. I was mistaken. I was thinking of how Daredevil did that last week. But Daredevil does manage to swoop in. Stiltman actually gets the better of Spider-Man in this. He uses a stun gas pellet, which I find it hard to believe. And so he actually gets away from Spidey. And I guess Spider-Man doesn't feel the need to go try to find him or whatever. But luckily, Daredevil manages to catch up with him after vaporizing Mass Marauder to dust, I suppose. He's able to short out his... This is so stupid. So Stiltman has his legs fully extended. He's walking over a bridge, right? Like with his legs in the water, sort of like straddling the bridge. Daredevil just kicks him and causes him to fall over. And the water shorts out his suit. And presumably the police fish him out of the river and take him to jail. So this was probably the best of this three-part story featuring Mike Murdock and Mass Marauder and Stiltman and Leapfrog before that. But I'm just glad this is over. Spider-Man was in it. It didn't save it. Spider-Man was a jerk through all this. So yeah, I'm ready to move on from this three-part story. I'm ready to be done with Mike Murdock, but spoiler alert, he shows up next issue, which we'll talk about next week. So just get ready for more Mike Murdock. Sorry. All right. Moving on, Avengers number 39. So if you remember last week, Hercules showed up, and he was bewitched, or he was put under a spell by the Enchantress. She made him fight the Avengers. He snapped out of it. He beat the Enchantress, but Zeus was mad that he left Olympus, so Zeus sort of banished Hercules to Earth for a year. So now Hercules is going to hang out. You know, he's kind of sleeping on the Avengers couch. You know, just biding his time. Just 1 second here. I just want to make sure. My sister texted me. I just want to make sure everything's okay. Oh, yeah, it's okay. Sorry about that, guys. So, this issue was kind of cool because the Mad Thinker shows up. Or, I don't know if the Mad Thinker, sometimes referred to as just the Thinker. He's faced off against the Fantastic Four before. I kind of like the Thinker, or the Mad Thinker, because he doesn't really have any powers or anything like that. But his whole deal is that he thinks of everything, right? And he uses these supercomputers to feed all this information into, to just predict the outcome of whatever it is that he's trying to do, right? If he's trying to rob a bank, he's going to predict how fast the cops will get there. And, you know, he has everything timed down to the second. So he knows, and we'll see it here in this issue, but he knows when the heroes are going to show up and what they're going to do. And it sounds ridiculous and unbelievable, but this is comic books. All of this stuff is ridiculous and unbelievable. So I just kind of like that the Thinker just... Because I love stories about villains being one step ahead of the heroes. That's why I've been enjoying Strange Tales for these last few issues, and we'll talk about that in a little while because we're gonna get a lot of that in this week's issue of Strange Tales. But or if you think about, like, I always go back to Kingpin, and especially like Kingpin in season 3 of Daredevil on Netflix, how he's one step ahead and he's already thought of everything. I love stories where the villains have done that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm kind of drawn to the Thinker. So this issue starts with Hawkeye still being upset that Black Widow is supposedly a traitor. Is supposedly was going to supposedly said forget it when the Avengers said that they were going to offer her membership. They don't know that she's on a secret mission for S.H.I.E.L.D., which to me, and I made a note of it, I said we get a little bit more info on the mission that Nick Fury recruited Black Widow for, which I find more interesting than anything the Avengers are doing. And that's true. I would love to know more about that. And I don't know. We're not getting any of that in Strange Tales where Nick Fury's popping up regularly. I don't know if that's going to factor into upcoming Avengers stories or not, or if they're just going to like mention a few things here and there. But I kind of wish they would because it's neat. But right here is where we get a little glimpse at it. So we see a little bit of, we're seeing this through the narration of Scarlet Witch reading a newspaper. And Black Widow, Nick Fury sent her behind, and again, this is the 60s. This is just how it was written back then. He says he sent her behind the bamboo curtain to do some espionage stuff. And I just want to read that, right? I just want to read Black Widow, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's actually a new Black Widow series that I think just hit Marvel Unlimited that I'm really excited to read. But while the Avengers are out doing that, Hercules is hanging out at Avengers Mansion. He's working out. He's getting swole. He he has some clothes delivered to him, right? Because he's wearing like a loincloth and a sash and a headband. You can't go out in that. Meanwhile, Hawkeye goes off to blow off some steam. Every hero in comic books swings on a rope, so Hawkeye's doing that as well. Meanwhile, Mad Thinker is, thinking. He's in the thinking man, with his, thinking man's position, right? I'm trying to remember what his motivation was. What was he trying to do? He was trying to... Yes. Of course. Of course this is what he was trying to do. When those costume clowns fall, I shall add many inventions of Anthony Stark to my computerized arsenal, and fall they must. In the past, I have failed because I've neglected to consider the so-called X Factor, not that X Factor because they don't exist yet, the so-called human element, but this time my entire master plan is based on my opponent's very humanity. Keep that in mind because that's going to come into play later. So his whole deal is, remember I said he thinks ahead, but he does that with the assistance of these computers that he feeds all this information into, and it sort of helps him predict what's going to happen. Well, he wants Tony Stark's equipment because every villain wants Tony Stark's equipment. I mean, Mole Man wanted Tony Stark's atomic driller in the issue of Tales of Suspense before that. Some thugs were trying to break into Stark Industries to steal some plans of Tony Stark. So Tony Stark is always, poor guys, people are always trying to steal stuff from him. So that's the Thinker's whole goal in this. Now, we're about to get into sort of the fun part of this, though. It's really silly, but it's kind of fun. So we get a nice little one-on-one battle between Hawkeye and a villain called Hammerhead. Now, me being a Spider-Man fan, the minute I saw Hammerhead, I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't look like the square-headed mob guy that is always trying to headbutt Spider-Man, and Spider-Man just always jumps out of the way and then webs him up and beats him all real easily all the time. Or if you're not familiar with the comics but have played the games, Hammerhead figured prominently into the City That Never Sleeps DLC from the Spider-Man PS4 game, and he was done really cool. I really liked him in that. They sort of made him a little bit more serious. This isn't that Hammerhead, right? This is somebody different. He looks ridiculous. If you think about the head of a hammer and how it's like, it comes up and is flat and round on top. That's what this guy's wearing on his head. He looks even more ridiculous than the real Hammerhead, the Spider-Man villain Hammerhead. So when I saw this guy, I was thinking, that looks ridiculous. Who is this guy? Why is he there? I like seeing Hawkeye sort of take him on one-on-one, though. That's kind of fun. Because I do like Hawkeye. I just don't like when he starts whining and crying about stuff, which he does a lot. So you got a little bit of a fight. Hawkeye and this Hammerhead guy who looks ridiculous. Meanwhile, oh, and Hammerhead beats him too. Hammerhead actually knocks out Hawkeye, right? Meanwhile, Hercules cleans up real well, and he's like going out to dinner, getting some drinks, talking to some women, talking to some ladies. Good for him. He's getting his groove back. It's really nice. Let's see. So, meanwhile, Thinker triggers the Avengers SOS system. They head out. Remember, the Thinker has already planned for all of this. Goliath and Wasp head out to answer the call while Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch stay back at Avengers Mansion. And what was the guy's name? I don't quite remember. Here we go. Pile Driver. So another costume guy shows up. Kind of looks like he's wearing kind of the same thing as Hammerhead. His costume is similar, but he's got these big fists, like these big gauntlets that he's wearing. And I guess I don't know if that makes him strong or just like he's like punching the ground and knocking out Goliath. And so I started to sense a theme here. Oh, these are like the Thinker's henchmen, basically. Like the Thinker found these guys to put on these ridiculous costumes, and it's done too because they have the letters. So if you can't see it, Pile Driver's got like a P, the letter P on his chest and his back, and Hammerhead had an H. It wasn't as egregious with Hammerhead because you could say, well, it's just like suspenders or something, but Pile Driver is wearing a P. He's in a white and a brown costume. I actually don't hate it. I don't hate that suit if you take the P off. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. So anyway, you have Pile Driver who beat Hawkeye. You now have you have Hammerhead who beat Hawkeye. You now have a guy named Pile Driver who is fighting Goliath and Wasp in a construction site. Kind of a cool battle here. Ridiculous villain, but still sort of a fun battle. He is able to take down Goliath and Wasp. And right here is what I was talking about a little while ago, where Thinker plans out everything. So Pile Driver says, I got you at exactly 9:53, just like the Mad Thinker predicted. So the Mad Thinker has everything down to the minute or to the second, which is a little silly, but I like it. Meanwhile, flashing back to Hercules, he's still getting his groove back. He's playing the guitar or the fiddle or the ukulele or something, singing songs, regaling his audience. It's really fun. It's kind of funny. Meanwhile, back at Avengers HQ, we still have Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver hanging out. There is a third henchman named Thunderboot. Thunderboot, right? So if you think about Pile Driver having these big gauntlets that make him kind of strong, he's able to punch the ground and punch these steel girders and stuff. Thunderboot has the same thing, except in the form of boots. So Thunderboot's outfit looks just like Pile Driver's, except it's blue and white instead of brown and white. And instead of a P on his chest, he has a letter T. It's so ridiculous. It's actually kind of funny. And I did make a mention that it's almost like a 60s version of the Wrecking Crew. They usually fight Thor. You've got I'm in a complete loss for their names. Wrecking Ball. Darn, I can't remember their names right off the top of my head. But you've got the guy in the green outfit with the wrecking ball, and you got the guy with the crowbar, and they always fight Thor. These guys remind me of a poor man's version of those guys. I don't know when those guys first show up either, but that'll be fun to see whenever we get there. So now you've got Thunderboot fighting Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And remember, this is all going according to the Mad Thinker's plan. Thunderboot is also able to dispatch Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. So these three construction-based villains, I guess you could say about them, managed to take down the entire Avengers. And it's exactly as Mad Thinker predicted. But remember when he said the last time he tried something like this, he didn't figure in the human element, and now he was going to? Well, this time he didn't account for Hercules. He didn't know Hercules was going to show up. Hercules just comes waltzing in the door. Hey, what's this? Why are the Avengers tied up? What are you doing to my buddies? And Hercules proceeds to just lay into these guys. He takes out Hammerhead pretty easily. He takes out Thunderboot pretty easily. He wallops Piledriver. Hammerhead gets back up. Thunderboot gets back up. So basically the rest of the issue is a fight between Hercules himself, just Hercules, and these three other villains that took down the rest of the Avengers. And Hercules was able to beat him. Beat all three of them, just like that. I mean, it's Hercules, right? I mean, of course he's going to have an easy time doing that. Now, the Mad Thinker does manage to get away, which is cool, because that means we're going to get more Mad Thinker at some point. But the other three guys, they're down and out. They're down for the count. And that was it. It does say next issue, Submariner. Ugh, you guys know that I don't like Namor. I just don't. I never really liked him, even as a kid reading comics. I really don't like him reading comics this way now. So I'm not looking forward to that. But this was you guys know that this is always my least looked forward to comic that I read every week. Avengers is, because I really haven't liked any of these Avengers issues, and we're 39 issues in, and I haven't liked any of them really. This one was a little better. I really hope Hercules stays around for a while, because he's a nice addition to the team. But this is the team that we're gonna be hanging out with for a long time. So I just got to get used to it. But this one was a little bit better. This one was okay. All right, moving on to Strange Tales number 55. Now, just like Tales of Suspense is a double feature between Iron Man and Captain America, Strange Tales is a double feature between Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Doctor Strange. I am only reading the Doctor Strange half of these books. Nothing against Doctor Strange. I like him just fine. I just didn't want to read Doctor Strange. That's all it was. I just didn't feel like it, right? So this issue of Strange Tales is really fun because it continues the theme of Hydra being one step ahead of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. If you remember what we've talked about over the last couple weeks, the Supreme Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. He has taken on the identity of a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent named Bronson. So he's proven himself. This Bronson character has really impressed Nick Fury. So Nick Fury sort of brought him into the inner circle of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is really dangerous because now the Supreme Hydra is really, really inside S.H.I.E.L.D. now. Well, that was bad enough, right? Well, they're taking it one step further in this issue where he's actually this guy. There's a scientist. His name's Professor Anton Trojak. Trojak, Professor Trojak. And I did have to make the observation. Strange Tales is the one series that doesn't zoom properly, right? So this panel on the right, I did have to make an observation that this is Colonel Sanders, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. That he looks exactly like Colonel Sanders. He made me want some fried chicken when I saw him. So this guy, Professor Anton Trojak, has been brought on the helicarrier. He brought a weapon. He brought something called a Q-ray machine. And that may or may not prove to be a good thing. Meanwhile, and by the way, Jim Steranko is on this book now, right? He's been on it officially for an issue or two now. Sort of dabbled in it a little bit for a couple issues, but Steranko is here now, and he gets better. Just like John Romita over in Amazing Spider-Man, Jim Steranko is getting better and better with every issue that passes. Steranko and Nick Fury go together like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it's awesome. So I love seeing this Steranko artwork. Meanwhile, so remember, Supreme Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, what's this? Now there's two more Hydra goons sneaking into the helicarrier, and they try to get Nick Fury when he's asleep. That's not cool. How did they get there? We don't know yet, but we'll find out. Nick Fury dispatches of him. I really like this page. I love the color of this page, like the red and the purple, because Nick Fury in the last panel on this page he throws a book. He throws the rule book. It's the Shield. It's the Shield rule book that he throws at the light to sort of darken everything, so that he can get the upper hand on the Hydra agents. So he knocks out the lights. I love the coloring on this page. Nick Fury dispatching of both Hydra agents quite easily. All right, so Nick Fury's like, holy cow, Sitwell, Gabe, Dum Dum, Bronson, everybody get together. Something's going on. These Hydra goons somehow managed to get onto the helicarrier. We got to figure this out. Nick Fury goes off to... remember, Nick Fury has been confined to his quarters because of what happened last issue. Remember, he botched a mission, and the president himself confined Nick Fury to quarters for doing a poor job. So he goes back to quarters. Meanwhile, Bronson, sort of kind of revealing himself to the other three, hypnotizes them with a ring, basically, and that'll come into play here in a little bit. Meanwhile, remember how I said Colonel Sanders, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Well, that was wrong. It's actually Colonel Sanders, secret Hydra operative. Annihil Agent 47, this guy, Trojak. I hope this guy shows up again, because he looks cool. Trojak. That's awesome, right? So, basically, where does it talk about it here? Let me see if we can just... Nope, can't do that. So basically, the weapon that he brought onto the helicarrier was kind of like if you think about the old Roman, like the Trojan horse, right? There were Hydra agents inside that thing, and that's how those Hydra agents got there. So Trojak manages to get the better of Nick Fury again. Hydra being one step ahead of S.H.I.E.L.D. And they have been for several issues, which I find remarkable. For being a book in the 60s, I'm surprised that this has lasted more than like one issue. But this has been going on for several issues now, where Hydra is just constantly one-upping S.H.I.E.L.D. at every turn. It's fantastic. Knocks out Fury, ties him up to the aphonic bomb. And I don't know if they really talk about what exactly this bomb does, but it's a bomb. That's no good, right? This is a cool page, though. So Fury manages to escape, manages to untie himself from the bomb. And check out that bottom panel. This right here, that looks really, really cool. Steranko's killing it on that one. This big explosion. I like the colors. We had the red on the one page. Now we got the blue here. So Fury's like, oh crap, now I know everything that's going on. Well, he doesn't know everything because he still doesn't know about Bronson. But I got to go alert Gabe, Dum Dum, Sitwell. Well, they got hypnotized, and now they are wearing Hydra gear, and they capture him. They capture Fury. And I want to say, was it this issue or... Oh, it was last issue. Okay, never mind. Fury's trying to get them to break out of their mind control. Sitwell is kind of sweating bullets. He's trying to fight back against it. The Q-ray breaks down the molecular structure of any object, scattering all its atoms, utterly destroying it. So that's what the Q-ray does, right? That's not good. This is a cool page right here. Trojak is going to turn it on, destroying S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury busts in from like a skylight, jumps in, cranks the Q-ray to overload. There's actually a label on this dial that says overload, aka don't turn it to this position. But Fury does that and overloads the giant Q-ray. He fights Trojak. Trojak, hail Hydra, all that goodness. The helicarrier is falling out of the sky. Oh, you know what? I apologize. It was this issue that the president confined Fury to quarters. I'm sorry. I was getting my issues mixed up. I thought that sounded like it was a little bit too early. So the Q-ray blows up. The helicarrier is actually plummeting to the surface of the Earth. They manage to upright it, but there's a tragedy. Lara Brown, remember, she's the daughter of the original Supreme Hydra, who they think is the new Supreme Hydra because the real Supreme Hydra, disguised as Bronson, made their autofac machine think that Lara Brown was the real Supreme Hydra. Well, Lara Brown, she's been hurt in this explosion. She must have been hiding in the autofax computer vaults. No wonder we didn't find her. But what's she doing in the Hydra outfit? It just don't add up. So Fury's onto this a little bit. But yeah, the president is none too happy with Fury's handling of this situation. You're the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and you let Hydra infiltrate us. This isn't gonna fly. You are confined to quarters. So my apologies for getting that mixed up. I for a minute I thought it was the last issue that this happened, but it's this issue. So again, man, this was fun. Great continuation. Like I said on Twitter, a great continuation to the really solid story of Hydra infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. I love that Hydra continues to remain one step ahead of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Fury still has no idea what's really going on. The good guys getting played this much was pretty rare in this era of comics, and I mentioned that a minute ago, where the good guys were supposed to be really, really good at what they do, and they're supposed to defeat the bad guys really quickly back in this era. But this story has been going on, and it's been really interesting. So I don't know how it's going to play out. I do know that Strange Tales featuring Nick Fury is only going to be around for 13 more issues, so they need to they got to wrap it up, start wrapping it up soon. But I like this. So more to come next week. More on this saga next week. All right, moving on. Last book is Fantastic Four number 61. Now I've been enjoying Fantastic Four for the most part. The last few issues has featured a cosmically powered Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom stole Silver Surfer's cosmic powers, and he didn't really do anything super bad. He just flew around the planet being a dick, like just turning hot climates cold and cold climates hot and all that stuff. Well, at the end of last issue, Reed basically was able to hornswoggle Doctor Doom he tricked him into losing the Surfer's powers, and the Surfer got his powers back. But that isn't really what this issue is about. Most of this issue is about the Fantastic Four taking on Sandman, which, I'm still amazed that I didn't really know that back in this era, Sandman was more of a Fantastic Four villain. He's only popped up in Spider-Man once, maybe twice. I don't quite remember. But he's battled the Fantastic Four several times. So, when I came into comics right around 1990, and even knowing about Spider-Man before that, I knew, Sandman is one of Spider-Man's villains. But man, back in the day, he was all up in the Fantastic Four's business. In this issue, he gets a costume that's weird looking. Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, the issue starts with Reed's working on something new. Something that he obviously hasn't perfected, as you can see. What is it called? I don't remember the atom igniter. I guess what it does is it probably ignites atoms, which doesn't sound like a good thing. It's going out of control. They're able to stop it, though. But it's weird because the gadgets in Reed's lab are starting to go crazy. So the atom igniter, it started to go out of control, and they were trying to shut it down, but it was actually sort of aiming itself at Reed and Sue and Ben. Johnny's not here right now. We'll see him later. They managed to blow that thing up, but then these gravity discs latch themselves. Gravipolarizers, because everything has a weird name like that. They attach themselves to Ben, suddenly make him spin around in the air. What's going on? Why is all of Reed's equipment messing up like this? We don't know. Flash forward to, or I'm sorry, not really flash forward, just take a different view on the Silver Surfer being tortured. I even made a note of this. Doom's goons are taunting the powerless Silver Surfer with pictures of space. That's one way to torture a prisoner, I guess. So they're torturing the Silver Surfer with a picture of space, saying, "Oh, I bet you wish you could go back to space." Well, we actually see the surfer's surfboard return to him. We saw the surfboard flying towards Doom's castle at the end of last issue, where we actually see him get it back. And an awesome panel, complete with Kirby dots, of a repowered Silver Surfer. I love that panel right there. That is awesome. That would be cool artwork to have, maybe this whole page. But I love that. The colors, the Kirby dots if you want to call them. Silver Surfer repowered. That's a fantastic shot of the Silver Surfer. I like that. And that's one cool thing about reading the books like this is identifying awesome pictures and awesome artwork and stuff like that. So I like to call it out when I see it. Jack Kirby doing Silver Surfer surrounded by Kirby crackle. It doesn't get any better than that. Anyway, Silver Surfer's got his powers back. Meanwhile, we jump back to the Baxter building, and the place is filling up with sand. What? What is that all about? Where's all this sand coming from? They're drowning in sand. Ben manages to bust through a wall so that the sand can flow out. They can catch their breath. But then the sand starts to sort of retract itself into this weird looking suit. What's up, Obi? The sand sort of retracts itself into this weird looking suit, and we see Sandman. And now this is a far cry from the brown pants, green striped shirt Sandman that we're used to. I actually don't hate this outfit except for the dumb mask. I don't know where, Yeah, Opie, it's real bad. I actually don't mind it except for the mask. And I don't understand how... I guess you could say this for his regular brown pant, green shirt suit, too. I guess I've never really understood why Sandman, when he's actually making himself into sand, it looks like sand, but then when he forms himself together, it looks like regular clothes. I don't really get that. But that's always been a thing. It's not just specific to this suit. That's just always how Sandman has been. But with the exception of the dumb mask, this actually isn't too bad, I don't think. But yeah, it's Sandman versus Fantastic Four, and he makes which is actually kind of cool, because if you think about it, Sandman can do a lot of the same things that Reed Richards can do. They can, Reed can stretch and contort his body. Sandman can sort of do the same thing. So it's kind of neat to see them fight. But yeah, they're just battling. He knocks down Ben. Stu tries to go invisible. Sandman has some gadgets in the suit too. Oh, I wanted to call out one thing too, real quick. I love this. So you remember, Sandman is buddies with the Wizard, who's like a super genius, right? Well, so Sandman, he's pulling himself together. He says, "Of course you should have known. After all, the Sandman isn't too easy to forget. During your absence, I took the advice of my old partner, the Wizard. I took a refresher course in science and then designed a new costume for myself. So he just brushed up on the science and made him a new suit. That's fantastic. I love it. I just refreshed myself on the science and was able to make this cool suit. Now, the suit does have a couple things in it. When Sue turns invisible, tries to run away, he pops out almost like Batman's utility belt. He pops out this little thing that these chemicals that sort of make his sand wet, so he can see her footprints in the sand, able to take her down. This is a weird picture of his face. He's got a big mouth there. He's got like a gazillion. That's like Rob Liefeld number of teeth in his mouth. But yeah, it's the Fantastic Four fighting Sandman. Meanwhile, we jump over to the Inhumans, because remember, the Inhumans a couple issues ago, Black Bolt released his voice, shattered the impenetrable dome. They're wandering the Earth, Crystal's trying to get to Johnny. Now, I did make a note too. Crystal's still... Wait a minute, let me get to it here. right here. Can we see it here? No, here we go. Crystal is still just pining over Johnny. I must, Gorgon. He's my only means of reaching Johnny's store. I'm talking about she wants Lockjaw to teleport her around to find Johnny. Until Johnny and I are together again, nothing else in life matters to me. Which is bizarre because I did make a note on Twitter saying that another reminder that since Crystal's first appearance 16 issues ago in Fantastic Four number 45, she and Johnny have only physically interacted with each other, like been physically around each other, for a total of about 5 hours, right? It's not like they have been together for forever and now they're separated and they have to get back to each other. They have only interacted with each other for less than a day. And Crystal is all distraught that she can't get back to Johnny. We've seen Johnny be like the whiniest little baby for several issues now, trying to get back to Crystal. It's a bit silly. I think they are about to get back together. Hopefully they do, because I can't take much more of the pining away. But she gets Black Bolt's blessing to let Lockjaw teleport her around to go find Johnny. So that's cool. This is kind of fun because he teleports her into the middle of a football game. Opie, this is one for you. You would like this. Right into the middle of a football game at, I'm assuming it's ESU. I'm not real sure if they say. Yeah, it's a football game between Old Metro and ESU. Yeah, it's got to be ESU. This was super cool and unexpected. And I made a note that said, hey, oh wait, you can't see it. Hold on. I said, hey, that guy with the camera and the redhead that's sitting next to him, they look awful familiar. Who do we know that's a photographer that attends ESU that hangs out with a pretty redhead? I don't know. It just, seems awful familiar, but I can't quite place it. So that was a cool little cameo. He doesn't ever do anything. Spider-Man doesn't show up, but it's kind of neat that they were there. I guess he's covering the game. So Lockjaw and Crystal teleport right into the middle of a football game. Wyatt Wingfoot is on the sidelines. It's kind of weird because the announcer makes a statement that says the big mystery of the day is who is the new 6'6" stranger on the Metro bench, and why hasn't Coach Sam Thorpe put him into the game yet? Well, I don't know, announcer. Maybe because he's not dressed out. Maybe because he's wearing a big raincoat or something. He's not even. He doesn't have his pads on. I found that a little strange. Doesn't affect the story at all. That's just one of the weird observations I made. But Crystal shows up. Crystal and Lockjaw show up right in the middle of a football game. Wyatt recognizes Crystal. He's never seen Crystal before, but Johnny has not shut up about her throughout their whole adventure to find Crystal. So he knows who Crystal is. He runs over, tells her where Johnny is. Says you just missed him. Johnny was here. Johnny heard about what's going down at the Baxter Building with the FF and Sandman, so he took off to the Baxter Building. And that's what we get here. So, crazy stuff going on at the Baxter Building. Johnny comes in to help out with Sandman. It's another battle between the Fantastic Four and Sandman. It's a little strange. And my final thought on this on Twitter was that most of this issue was pretty silly. I didn't love this one as much as I've really enjoyed some of the last ones. I said most of this issue was silly. It's ridiculous that the entire FF have trouble defeating Sandman when Spider-Man can usually beat him alone. Right? Because he eventually becomes known as a Spider-Man villain. And every time he shows up, Spider-Man usually doesn't have too much trouble. Not saying that the Fantastic Four are way more powerful than Spider-Man, but it's the Fantastic Four. There's 4 of them. And 4 of them together can't take down Sandman. I thought that's a little bit weird. But maybe when he's part of the Frightful Four, yeah. But by himself, they should be able to do better than this. But more fighting. Not much to dive into here. But where it gets really interesting, and the most interesting part of this issue is at the end. Because this is going to literally open the door for some interesting new stories that the Fantastic Four are known for that we haven't really seen yet. So the way that they defeat Sandman is Reed, you can see him tugging at this door here. I've got to open the door to the negative zone. So everybody knows that the Fantastic Four and the negative zone go hand in hand. And this is our this isn't the first appearance of the Negative Zone, but this is, well, you'll see in a second. So he opens the door to the Negative Zone, which basically it's like opening the hangar door on a space shuttle in space. Like everything gets sucked into the Negative Zone, right? And you can see Johnny's hanging on for dear life. Sandman's getting sucked in. Sandman starts to get sucked into the Negative Zone, but he jumps out the window. However, Reed gets sucked into the Negative Zone. Yeah, the upside down, right? Well, you know what? It's actually kind of like that. It's not like creepy monster driven like the upside down is, but it's kind of like a, well, it's not like it's just a alternate space, you know? And there's all kinds of new things in the Negative Zone. Now, Reed has dabbled in the Negative Zone over we've seen in a couple issues. He has gone into the Negative Zone, but Ben's always been there to help pull him out. Not this time. Reed just gets sucked into the Negative Zone. And the rest of the Fantastic Four freaking out. Now, this is a little freaky too. Like, I guess Reed has like a viewing screen into the Negative Zone, and they can actually see him floating around, which I actually thought was pretty neat. Now, you know, the Negative Zone, eventually they get control over being able to, I mean, in modern comics, the Fantastic Four are going to the Negative Zone like they're going into the next room of their house, right? That's where I don't know if it's still there, that's where they put that prison. Was it at the beginning of Civil War? They actually built a prison for supervillains in the Negative Zone, the Friend Zone. I've been there a lot. I can tell you all about the Friend Zone. But yeah, so this is cool because Reed is sucked into the Negative Zone, and this really kind of opens the door for stories about the Negative Zone. So we're talking about Annihilus, we're talking about Blastar, who I peeked ahead to the next issue is on the cover. So we're going to get those kinds of stories. So, you know, there's lots of fun stories of the Fantastic Four in the Negative Zone, and I think this is going to be sort of the start of that. Like I said, it's not the first appearance of the Negative Zone, and it's not Reed's first foray into the Negative Zone, but now he's kind of stuck in there, and now we got to figure out how he's going to get out, and presumably he's going to meet other creatures and other beings in the Negative Zone. So that's going to be really, really quite cool. So that's it, guys. That's it for the books for this week. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Like I said, if you want to follow along with these comics as I read them every day, you can follow @_comicsdaily on Twitter. Don't forget the underscore in front. I hate that it has to be there, but it has to be there because everything else was taken. So @_comicsdaily on Twitter. I read one of these. So we've covered 6 issues here. I tweet about one every day. So today I posted about Tales of Suspense number 80, whatever it was. Tales of Suspense number 89. Yesterday was Amazing Spider-Man number 48. Amazing Spider-Man's cool. We're 2 issues away from that classic Amazing Spider-Man number 50 cover, Spider-Man No More, where he threw the Spider-Man suit in. Well, that's not on the cover, but in the issue, he throws the costume in the trash can and walks away. He says, "I don't want to be Spider-Man anymore." Classic issue, classic cover. That's coming in 2 weeks. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, so appreciate, like I said, follow me @_comicsdaily on Twitter, where I talk about these things every day, post screenshots, musings, trends that we see reading through these issues. We count the word fella in every issue. The record is 6. But yeah, so follow me there, and we'll be back next Monday night to talk about the books from May of 1967. So I'm out here, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.